All right. I believe we're live with Mike Donio. Mike, you've been a research scientist for 2 decades, and we were planning to do this before I even saw this tweet. But I'm so glad I have you on because this was fascinating to me, and I think will be something that you can give us a lot of insight into as well. And this was a tweet that Pfizer sent out a few weeks ago, so it's not that new, but it's also not that old. Hashtag gene therapies have the potential to offer significant value to patients, health systems, and society. In partnership with Politico, we brought together experts to discuss how we can collaborate to support patient access to these innovative therapies. So obviously, like they love gene therapies. Okay, so that's
Mhm.
so here's what you get when you click on the link: the next generation of healthcare therapies. The event is presented by Pfizer, which we hear in the commercials, like this is brought to you by Pfizer. When somebody put together that collaboration, or the all the news commercial breaks, brought to you by Pfizer. So it says join Politico. This was Thursday, July 20th, to dive deep into the landscape of these future healthcare therapies and how they could reshape our current healthcare system. Come discuss how government and industry can work collaboratively together to optimize patient access to gene therapies in a cost effective, sustainable way. We will also explore the opportunities for increased access to gene therapies and how barriers that limit access to gene therapies are missed opportunities to reduce healthcare disparities. So, obviously, like nothing critical about gene therapy. I didn't read anything about the COVID vaccine being a gene therapy, which I don't even know if you're allowed to say that on YouTube at this point. I don't even know, even though I've had people, I've had literal like gene gene therapy experts at major institutions come on and talk about that and why it should not be in any way censored. That's just like the reality of it, but whatever. Okay, so we're on YouTube, so we'll just a heads up to everybody, we may cut the stream. If you want to watch these videos, they've got the videos up. I'll just be honest, I have not watched the videos. I don't know. I'm gonna go deep dive. I just saw the tweet, so I haven't had time. But fodder for, you're bored at home, you want to watch all these videos. What I think is interesting is not just who all these people are, like the FDA guy here. We got NIH people here. We have Pfizer people here. We have Politico client partnerships also here. So it's government, Pfizer Corporation, and journalism, Politico. Now, somebody might say this is the vice president of client partnerships with Politico. First off, just so everyone knows, Politico apparently has client partnerships. So you just know that. And it's just, Politico it espouses itself as a journalism outlet. And it's essentially partnering with this drug company to tell you why you should get gene therapy. And there's nothing critical that I see here. And I just am shocked that they're just so blatantly out there about the fact that they're just going to partner with Pfizer while espousing themselves as a journalism institute and just push medical treatments on people. I just thought that was crazy. I mean, I guess I shouldn't think it's crazy because we've seen this over and over, these partnerships, but I just that they're so blatantly obvious about it. That was just weird to me. Well, what do you think, Mike? Take it away. That's my opening.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this tweet caught me by surprise too, although we shouldn't be surprised by these kinds of things anymore, I don't think, especially when every time you turn on the TV, if you still do turn on regular TV, and then you see commercials or you see this event or whatever is brought to you by, inevitably it's Pfizer's always going to be one of the main sponsors for everything. I think they pretty much own all of TV, media, the news. So to see them do a partnership with Politico is not that surprising. And then of course the government being included, it's kind of the magic trifecta where you have big pharma, big media, and the government all in cahoots. And now they're talking about the hot button word of gene therapies, which, as you said, God forbid we try to have a discussion about what the COVID vaccines really are, which is gene therapies, hint, hint. Um, but yet they can sit there and have this kind of a discussion like these things are the next big thing. And yeah, I mean, I just skimmed some of the videos, so I can't speak to exactly what was talked about, but it's just interesting to note, as you said, the the groups involved and the people involved, uh, and how they are presenting things, even in the kind of introduction there.
Hmm. It's really weird to me. Like, are they hurting for money at Politico, or do they see this as a public service? It has definitely taken a different tone. I think over the last few years, I saw far more like pharmaceutical or government partnerships with journalism outlets during COVID, and they were presenting it like they were doing a public service, like, hey, we're all getting together as a one-stop shop, basically, to educate people about COVID, to educate people about COVID vaccines, to help you at the vaccine clinic. You know, people are outside, like you have the reporter doing a live shot with people going and getting their vaccine, and this is very weird. But maybe that has laid the foundation for doing stuff like this, where it's like, yeah, we're just going to be open about the fact that, I mean, I'm glad they're being open about it, honestly. Maybe that's the one piece of ethics that they do have here, is at least they're telling us that they're partnering with Pfizer. But I think this would have been 15, 20 years ago, this, to me, this would have been bad form. I don't see this as just being an acceptable. uh I mean, I'm sure this stuff existed. I'm just saying, like, you know, if we put together a panel discussion on something, like I did a panel discussion once on the killer whales that are dwindling in number in the Pacific Northwest, and we did bring a lot of people together for this panel, but it wasn't sponsored or put together or presented by the government or by some killer whale drug company, you know, or killer whale
Hmm.
recovery group, or even a killer whale nonprofit. I mean, it was our panel, and we invited you to come on, and that way we didn't have a conflict of interest with any of the people that were on the panel, because, you know, we could get rid of you if we wanted to. There was no buy-in on our part to keep you there. And I just thought this was just very odd, but it to me, it's kind of a sign of our times, and I guess that doesn't surprise you either. I guess maybe we want to tell people a little bit about yourself and how you were a research scientist. Now I'll show everybody your website, Science Defined, and you started all this because you got fired uh, during the COVID era. You want to tell people a little bit about why?
Yeah. So, as you said, I've been a research scientist for 20 years, and most of that has been in the pharma and biotech industry. I've worked for not Pfizer, but other big pharma companies, so quite familiar with that arena. Most recently, though, I was a senior scientist at a small biotech company in the immuno-oncology space, so developing antibodies to treat cancer. I helped to bring two antibodies to clinical trials during my time there. That was up until, um, let's see, about September of 2021, when the entire industry, I think, pretty much rolled out vaccine mandates. My company, my former company, followed suit pretty quickly, and I submitted a religious exemption. They declined it and basically gave me an ultimatum. I would not comply, and they unceremoniously showed me the door. And so since then, I've been speaking out and sharing kind of the truth about the current state of science and talking about all things COVID. I decided that we needed a powerful solution to ensure that we do the best we can to make sure this sort of stuff doesn't happen again, especially looking towards future generations. I have young kids, and Science Define was something that I thought could be a really good resource. And I'm happy to kind of get into what that is more if you'd like.
Yeah, before you do that, before you get into science defined, let me just show you a quick question over on locals that someone had for you about our original topic and what you think. Not that I would know, but those gene therapies go 1 million euro USD per patient and are currently the most profitable produced substance other than antimatter. Of course, I only heard that and cannot vouch for veracity. Surely did not hear that in the presentation facility, of Pfizer. So let's talk real fast. Like, what do you think is the reason for if there is a partnership with a journalism outlet like Politico, or they're like, we really got to get, the drug companies like, we got to get the media involved and get in good with the government and everything for these gene therapies. They're the new horizon, the next frontier. What's the motivation from your perspective? I mean, I tend to think that a lot of people convince themselves they're doing a public service. They would never say we're doing it because we want to make a lot of money. But what do you think about the profitability of these treatments?
Well, just like with a lot of things in pharma, it's all about profits, and this is just like anything else. There's probably a huge profit margin. Um, Pharma and the pharma industry and the biotech industry, they're very careful about the things that they bring to market, and profitability is a huge factor in the development of any drug. It's not in any way, shape, or form driven exclusively, and sometimes almost not at all by the clinical ramifications, whether there's specific evidence of science to back it up or not. The profitability, the marketability tends to even many times go above that. So that that would certainly be at play there. I think something like this would also fit a need to educate the public on these next generation gene therapies, whatever the exact technology is that's being used, and present Pfizer as the the good the good person in all this that's trying to help people with these new technologies. We're not trying to profit off of people. We're not trying to harm anybody. We're not trying to do anything nefarious. You know, but if you've ever looked at the history of gene therapies, it's not very good.
Well, one one of the things that I've thought was really interesting about not being able to discuss that, on some of the social media platforms was exactly what I saw in that Pfizer Politico presentation. Like the people who are really true believers about gene therapy, they think it's the next best thing. And even the ones who were like critical of it related to the COVID vaccine, they weren't critical of it like because they think there's anything wrong with gene therapy. They love gene therapy. They're like they just were like, call it what it is. So I don't quite understand what the concern about tying those two together was over the last couple of years. Like if you love gene therapy, like we saw that conference discussing, it's like it's the next best thing. Why wouldn't you have wanted to connect it to the COVID vaccine? I mean, that's just very odd to me, isn't it? And before you answer that, okay, hang on. I'm going to stop you for a second because I think we might continue the conversation on the other platforms. I'm going to debate that while I promote my wine for a second, whether we should get into gene therapy and let you answer the question on YouTube. But don't forget, everybody, it's a great opportunity to support my work if you're a wine drinker. You're sitting here thinking, Mike's about to tell us stuff that's going to make me want to drink. Even if he doesn't, this is a great way to support my work if you're a wine drinker. AllisonWinePromo.com, 50% off the best Malbecs you've ever had and 50% off shipping. Big thanks to this company for sticking with me through some rough times and through interviews that many companies would not support. So I got to give Bonner Wine a shout for that. And like I said, you can't get them at the grocery store. They're extremist altitude. We have one right now that you can buy that's from almost 9,000 feet. That's very high. Skiing, I ski at like 4,500 feet. So it's like double where I ski. Imagine being a grape, how hard that grape is working for your palate. and your taste buds. So go get some amazing extremist altitude wine, remote regions, high altitude, and also family farms. A lot of like hand-picked grapes, natural fermentation, just good, clean stuff. So my favorite wines. And then also, if you go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, if you're a coffee drinker or a tea drinker, you can also support my work. twinenginecoffee.com/Allison and get some USDA certified organic roast. There's light roast, there's dark roast, there's espresso roast, and there's tea that you brew from the coffee fruit. So, Mike, how about this? Let's do this. Let's talk about the gene therapy stuff. I'm going to cut the YouTube stream, not to evade censorship, just because I like it better. But before we cut, I want to make sure we give everybody on YouTube a taste of what Science Defined is and your work, and then we'll get into the gene therapy stuff. So let me pull up Science Defined. Why? Well, let's talk about what it is first, and then why you thought we needed it.
Okay, yeah. So let me just give you a little bit of a spiel on what it is and why I think it's a very powerful resource. So Science Defined essentially offers an educational platform that can help you understand complex terminology and concepts that are used by doctors, scientists, and quite frankly, the entire medical profession. And why is this important? It's because we want to prepare you to be your own best health advocate. With Science Defined, you can learn how to digest the personal impacts of those complex scientific studies that you see a lot. You'll be armed with the understanding to consider the influence and the impact of products and services that have names with 16 syllables. That's just a joke. Science Defined will set you on a firm foundation to make the most of this crazy modern life we find ourselves in, and we will provide you with the tools to unpack scientific concepts in terms that anybody can understand. So no more of this, you're not a scientist, you can't understand this stuff. The goal is to break this down so that anybody can understand this, because this information should be free and accessible to anybody, not just an expert or a scientist or a doctor or whoever. And most importantly, I think you'll gain the understanding to identify information and resources that you can rely on to make those critically important decisions for yourself and your families. And so that's really what this is all about.
Okay. Why did you feel like we needed something like this?
So throughout COVID, I had talked to a lot of people in my community, friends, family, etc. They were just, for the most part, quite overwhelmed by the barrage of information, often highly technical. And so they'd say to me, "Hey, Mike, you're a scientist. Can you tell me what the heck this term means, or what is this talking about or referring to?" And I was able to help people to break this stuff down, to distill it, to make it, a lot more understandable, and how they could apply it to their specific situation. And they were really appreciative. And I said, this could be a really important resource, because then I also had other people saying to me, "You're a scientist. Do you think that anybody should be able to discuss this, that this is knowledge that should be accessible to anybody?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. I mean, I think it's preposterous that a scientist or anybody would say that somebody can't discuss this kind of stuff because they're not a member of that particular expert community or anything like that." I said, "This should be available to anyone." So Science Defined was essentially born from that.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, this is it. We'll see you over on Rumble, ROKFIN, or Locals. Okay, Mike.